Morning. Welcome to the Monday meeting of the BOCC. We'll start with prosecuting attorney as soon as we get our stuff.
No, Dennis? No. Good morning. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. And so we have our prosecuting attorneys funds for this morning. So the first one is their prosecuting attorneys general fund. And there is a unfavorable variance on the revenue compared to last year, but it's immaterial. It's not material on the year-to-date actuals. These were prepared a couple of weeks ago, so they're actually through the month of March. So some of the ones you see later will be through the month of April because we completed April. So revenue comparison on their revenue for the current year, their budget, they're sitting at 31% on intergovernmental right now. And some of the others, they don't have any revenues basically showing as of yet. But they're on track I don't foresee any major revenue changes on the budget for the prosecuting attorney general fund. On their expenditure side, they have some unfavorable variances compared to year-to-date of March, but they're not material in supplies and services. And personnel is unfavorable basically due to the COLAs and various step increase actions. So they're on track, as you can see on personnel, their budget for the current year, they're sitting at 24% of budget. So that's what I would have expected at this point in time. And then for supplies, there's hardly any movement there. There's a very small budget, and services is predominant. It's at 61% of budget, but that's because we bill all of our services for IT risk at the beginning of January. And then we did add for you the FTE currently that they're sitting at. This is based upon the last payroll, and that's 21.75 for the prosecuting attorney's office. And we'll be adding prior year to this, but we didn't have enough time to get that pulled together before the meeting today. So if that's I think that's what y'all were asking for, to see what their FTEs look like, and if I can replicate them for last year, that I'll do that. Any questions on the prosecuting attorney general fund?
So on the personnel, the FTEs, does that include the totals for just this fund or the whole department?
That's just the general fund, that particular general fund in that department.
Right. So victim witness will have some personnel costs, and
Yes.
whatever Cowlitz County drugs are, I'm not quite sure.
No, there's no personnel in that one. And then They'll have child support will have
Yes.
FTEs.
Okay.
So the next one that I'll go over, Bailey, what do you have next? Child support. That's what I have next. Yay. So on child support, this is general fund, and they have intergovernmental revenues showing, and as a percentage of budget for the current year, it's 29%, so it's pretty much on track. I don't have any significant variances. They have a positive variance right now compared to last year. And then on the expenditure side, the personnel expenses are 21% compared to budget, and that's appropriate for given 3 months. And then their expenses for the other categories, again, same thing on services, showing 42% of budget, but that's because most services are front-loaded in January. And then their FTEs are 4 in child support services. Any questions on that one?
Out of curiosity, Ryan, what's we have 4 people that work in there. I'm assuming they handle cases. What's the caseload?
Well, right now, the current status of our office is we have 3 support staff, 1 attorney. We have 1 vacant attorney position. We had somebody leave us to go to private practice 1 to 2 months ago. So that's currently open. We also have 1 of our 3 support staff is retiring mid-year. We do not anticipate refilling that position. So our expectation is hopefully by the end, sometime this year, but with current staffing issues or hiring issues, we should have 2 attorneys, 2 staff. But they have a caseload of a couple hundred cases. And so generally what those cases, so that is a line item, and, or I guess my department gets reimbursed through state and federal money. So basically they are handling or have an involvement in family law cases that have some kind of state or federal interest. So generally people receiving some type of benefits. And so they are providing, they're working the cases, they have to do with paternity, modifications of support, people not paying support enforcement, setting of custody, stuff like that, that involves some kind of, state or federal benefit that the parties receive.
If I may.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I will say, support enforcement cases have been declining. So we've been talking to the WAPASEP, Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys Support Enforcement Program Director, Ms. Edgar, with the somebody leaving. I always gave her a call on a recent spring break vacation, on refilling an attorney position. So I've been engaged with her on staffing and what we need, don't need, because I don't want to hire somebody and then, lose a position in a few months. So my anticipation would be is that we wouldn't refill the retired support staff. We would fill the attorney, but we're also in the process of moving our support enforcement office from over on Commerce within my current office. So there's been meetings between county officials as well as state officials. So hopefully that's sooner than later because my 10-year lease over there is up in 2 months, a month or 2. So yes, Mr. Morgan.
I think that a corollary question to that question is, what is an event occurs that causes somebody to enter the legal system, hence you, at some point, and then there's an end point in time that's a resolution. Where is the choke point? What is the path that is slowing any results down? Because I hear constantly it's that the justice system has no concept at all of how agonizing it is to the individual. And so I'd like to know, are you the long pole here? Can we, what's the average delay and all that kind of stuff. We need something along those lines, I think, to help us decide whether we need to put more resources or not.
So now we're off child support and on general criminal. Or do we-
Everything.
Do we want to save that till after the numbers?
I beg your pardon?
I said, okay, so we're talking general criminal cases at this point, right? For the
No,
most part.
I'm talking everything. If you're involved, you've got a clientele out there. And I'm saying, are they a happy clientele? And if they're not happy, tell me why they're not happy and tell me the reason you can't accommodate them. And that should involve us to try and help.
So on the support enforcement side or civil or family law cases, kind of the choke point for them is criminal because criminal takes priority over civil cases, right? So generally speaking, on any month's time,
But you have a staff for them. You've got some 4 FTEs, you said,
5, but 4 current.
or 5, yeah. So if I translate what you said to me just now, that's not sufficient, in your opinion.
Yes, it is.
Why does the criminal load interfere with this then? Because you were saying.
I don't really have I don't have concerns as to, I mean, a lot of these support enforcement cases are driven by the party's attorneys, right? We are kind of a third party person who just has the vested interest. So we're not steering the ship as to those
Okay.
family law cases. But any family law case is kind of minus attorneys trying to work it out or whatever process they're going through. We're not really guiding much in the family law realm.
That's the answer I'm looking for. It's a really insightful for us to try and figure out what the problem is. Like I suspect that the time for trials and all that is somewhere in there, particularly if we go into the criminal side. But there is family court also, and there is non-criminal, I don't know what you call it.
Civil.
Civil, easy for you to say. And just for us to understand all that will be fairly useful.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yes, so we're more of a third party. Yeah, we're supposed to be the objective third party, just taking care of state's interest or federal interest. So we're not in the weeds of the bickering back and forth or
Right,
the accusations
right.
going back and forth amongst, divorcing parties or custody.
Yeah.
issues.
Completely appreciate that. Thank you. But you'll soon address that question on the criminal.
We'll talk about that, I guess, when we get there.
Yep.
Okay. Next, we have witness, victim witness fund. And for this fund, there on the revenue side, there isn't any unfavorable variances. They're all favorable. I don't foresee any issues on this one. It's also not a very large budget. And then for the expenditures side, next, I'm seeing a couple of unfavorable variances in supplies and services, but they're very immaterial. As I noted, personnel's running at almost 21% of budget, so we're on track there. And services are predominantly front-loaded in the month of January, so that's why it's 87% of budget. And then, according to the payrolls headcount as of right now, it's FTEs I put here. 3.25 FTEs are allocated to the victim witness program.
So with 3.25 FTEs and less than $300,000 budget, I'm assuming there aren't lawyers involved in this department.
No.
Okay.
And I'm not sure exactly the breakdown, but I can talk about our victim witness program in a bit, but it's changed. We've changed it this year to provide a lead and 4 people, but legislatively, one thing that did happen last year with, obviously every prosecutor's office gets some form of funding for victim witness. Historically, there's always been a legal financial obligation imposed upon a defendant called the victim penalty assessment that was either $500 for felonies or gross misdemeanors or $250 for misdemeanors. I think it was last year, the legislature got rid of that, so no longer can we impose the victim penalty assessment against the person that committed the crime against the victim. But last year, the legislature promised that they would fully fund the lack of revenue that's now going to occur. Well, last year, rather than 4 million statewide, they only funded 2 million. So one of our legislative priorities this year was to get that up to 4, and it's probably one of the few positive things that happened in the legislature this year as it pertains to prosecutors is the legislature did fully fund the lost revenue from the victim penalty assessment, which used to be imposed upon defendants.
So the intergovernmental, we hope, will.
I don't know what the number is, but it just got passed this last session.
And so this staff does what? The program provides what kind of service?
So our victim witness program basically take care of victim bill of rights. So we're what's called a system-based advocate. So basically it's our duty to inform, receive information, and provide input. So when a new case comes in, so the Monday morning, this morning, when I showed up at 7:15, there was a whiteboard that are all our new felony arrests. It was clear, but then 10 minutes later, Karen was filling it out. So we had about 8 new felonies this morning for over the weekend. So our victim coordinators at this point, when a case is brand new, obviously is reviewing the PC, getting in contact with the, if it's a victim crime, the victim, inquiring to them as to, hey, do you want a no contact order imposed? Yes or no, or maybe. Letting them know when court dates are after today's first appearance, letting them know what bail was set, when his arraignment will be for her. Getting them pamphlets as to what their victim bill of rights are, getting them restitution forms so that they, if there's any restitution damage that's owed to them, they can provide us with the information. As the case goes on, they contact them, talk to them about what's going on with the case, set up meetings with the attorneys. If there's interviews that are happening, set up interviews with defense counsel and the prosecutors, trying to figure out times that are appropriate. If there's a case that gets resolved either through a plea agreement, if they want to provide a victim impact statement, whether that's a letter, an email, in person, they coordinate that. If there's a trial, they coordinate all the witnesses for the trials. Today we have a 5-day sex case starting, so they were at it this morning trying to help Allie with that. So basically they're doing everything related to, keeping victims apprised of the situation, providing them with all the information that they need, whether that's, assistance with maybe injuries, restitution, employer issues, this, that, or the other. So.
Thank you.
And so those 4 individuals, I'm gonna say 98% assist with our felony caseload, which is anywhere between 1,200 and highest I've seen it was 1,700 some cases a year. We have 1 support staff in district court, which pretty much is the victim service provider for district court. And then we have a juvenile support staff who is the victim service provider for juvenile. But our team primarily deals with the felony cases.
And again, here, you're not the long pole or the choke point in any of this.
No, they're usually the ones who do have to deal with the issue of, well, why did the case get set over again?
Yeah.
So. But one thing we did do recently is we had 3 in the office due to, let's just say, some turnover of employment. We provided more structure and oversight in the victim witness on 2 employees that were no longer employed in our office. So we have a really good thing going right now.
And are they at Hall of Justice or are they at Commerce?
Yes, they're in the front of our office. All 4 of them are in a single room.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, and the final one is Cowlitz County Drug. And this one has forecasted very little revenue to come in, 17,500. And so we have just a little bit of actuals for this first quarter, nothing significant. And then on the expenditure side, we don't really have, we have $1,500 budgeted for expenses, and we haven't incurred any, and we didn't incur any last year either. And there are no FTEs associated with this fund.
So what is the Cowlitz County drug?
Yeah.
What?
It's
It's money sitting
it's
around
fent-
is what it is.
Oh, it's fentanyl,
That's
as
what
best
it
as I
is.
can tell.
I was gonna say, that's what it appears like. It's just,
So back in the day, and I can't tell you when, it is basically a fund that was created by county resolution that allowed the prosecutor courts to impose a fine upon defendants for drug cases. And so basically, the legal financial obligations that used to be imposed on defendants, part of that included a drug fund. So quite often you have, I guess, I do a lot of our legal financial obligations when people are petitioning to reduce those or reduce interest. Big issue right now is the Blake. I do all the Blakes within the office. So you look back at a judgment and sentence from 20 years ago that was imposed upon a defendant, you'd see at least, you could see $3,000 to $4,000 of costs imposed, which generally include like a filing fee, court-appointed attorney fee of $750, a meth fine of $1,000 or $2,000, a drug fund fine, which is where this comes from. I've seen anywhere from $50, $250, $500, and it varies over the years. Now it's $0. So this is not something that's going to get replenished on any level. And other legal financial obligations, the victim penalty assessment, DNA fee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a fine that was imposed upon defendants for quite a few years. Our courts haven't imposed it for quite some time. But basically this money is just the residual from payments received from, apparently some people did pay their legal financial obligations. Although going through all the drug cases, you realize how much nobody ever paid anything. But so that's where this money came from. It's growing much slower now than what it used to, but I can't remember what it was at 9 years ago, but it's probably doubled since then. But basically it's sitting there. The only money I've used it for was this money has to be used for either drug-related prosecution or law enforcement. So it's been used in the past for, well, furniture was the most recent purchase a few years back, but generally it hasn't been used. I haven't used it for anything really other than that, so.
So it doesn't go for treatment programs? Is that something that we could change the resolution and make that available?
I don't think so.
Was that a recommendation or? I mean, if it's,
He did it quite well, though.
yeah.
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 No,
I mean.
I don't think so. I can
it's
look
still
into
part
it, but I think it was for that special limited purpose of drug prosecution or enforcement or law enforcement.
But we're not using it. Pretty much. I mean, the need for it is as strong as it used to be because the money's not coming in, but.
Yeah.
If there are other needs. So if we were.
To be honest, my honest assessment of the money is that I anticipate I will need it at some point in the future to offset some reduction of budget.
So you confused me at one point, I know, easily done. You said the growth of the fund is slowing down. But I thought earlier you said we can't find any more, so if there's any money coming in, it's leftover obligations that are coming in.
From years ago, yeah.
So at some point, you call it quits and this, okay.
I mean, I don't know how much it's grown year
Yeah.
over year lately, but
Last year was $5,688. And for the first 3 months, we brought in $1,129.
So the
So it's-
17,500 is what's owed from out there in the ether?
I think it was just an estimate of a budget.
But it's an estimate based on what then? Because you can't
don't-
find anymore.
don't know.
Thank you.
That's all I have on the financials for prosecuting attorney. So I'll turn it over to Ryan to,
Before you go on to financials, I'd like to see stuff at a glance, and you've done a lot towards seeing stuff at a glance. I still, if there's ever an opportunity to get these out a little earlier, be good. But then also, 21% is what we should be based on the month.
so, yeah, so this was for 3 months. And so it really should have been running more like about from 20 to 25% for the first quarter on most things like personnel.
Could we see that somehow on, I know it doesn't apply universally, but if I saw one of those bar charts and I had a line there that said, this is
Expected.
where we should be.
Okay, we can do that.
If it's easy, if it's not, then
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Add it to the footnotes, maybe.
Yeah,
That'd be
but
fine.
I can add it to the bar, to the graph. That way it's easy
I
to
think
see.
you had it early on and then we. At any rate, yeah, that would be, that would be good. And Ryan, I appreciate the update on things that are happening in the office that may or may not affect the budget, but the plans to move, consolidate the eliminate the lease for the Commerce Avenue Department. And
Yeah, it was a 10-year lease that was entered right before I took office.
yeah,
Although apparently it's a really cheap lease, but it's a very large space for
Yep.
reducing staff.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time I have, or I don't know what direction we want to go here, but I can talk about vacancies, issues we had in the office with staffing. I can talk a little bit about, I know you guys always hear about drug court and mental health court from Adam and the crew, but I can talk about our felony diversion program, which budget is zero. I don't ask for any money for that we handle. We can talk about choke points.
I think you should take this opportunity to educate us on what you think could make your job more effective. And that may be explaining all those things you mentioned, or
Well, I think from our biggest issue right now has kind of been turnover and staffing issues. I think a lot of that has to do with, I guess, pay. I mean, you kind of have two different sides of the office, right? You have attorneys who we recently adjusted salary structure in the last year or two. I think something I am looking at and need to look at is support staff. On the attorney side, body-wise, we're currently down 3 attorneys, one of those being in support enforcement, which somebody didn't like the offer I provided them. I was thinking I was going to fill it, but they denied it. We have 2 criminal positions, body-wise, are open. We have somebody who is starting in about anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, depending on this person's circumstances. And we still have 1 criminal DPA position open. I can just tell you, generally speaking, over the last 10 years, I used to receive 20 applications for an open attorney position, and now I'm lucky to get 1 law student who has not even graduated yet or taken the bar exam in July for results coming out in September, October. So the number of attorney applicants has gone down. I don't think that's an issue with Cowlitz County. I mean, I think we're pretty decently situated for somebody who wants to be near a big city. I don't know why, but Portland or, Vancouver. Compared to comparable counties, I think we're pretty comparable with Lewis County. Generally speaking, I've never lost any attorney to one of our comparable counties as, we use for salary structures, but I have lost attorneys to, I guess most recently, I've lost an attorney to Snohomish County, to our civil department. Jason moved over to civil. I've lost an attorney to the Attorney General's office because he gets to work from home and do prisoner complaints all day, every day. So I've lost numerous attorneys, and usually it has to do with more money. But unfortunately, the general issue is number of applicants is down significantly compared to what it was a decade ago. Now, I know the law schools haven't exactly promoted prosecution for a while. They seem to be promoting public defense, but yeah, so that's an observation on the attorney side. On the support staff side, we tend to get quite a few applicants. You know, I've lost multiple support staff due to money. I think 2 of those are in your guys' front office.
Actually, I'm not, no specifically, was it because of the money or the opportunity for growth?
I don't know.
Because okay.
I'm just saying,
Anyway, we appreciate you collaborating with us.
I appreciate being the training ground. But support staff, actually, probably for the first time in about a year, we are fully staffed. As of about a month ago. But kind of looking at, I am looking at salary studies as it pertains to support staff. Obviously, Longview's going to pay what Longview's going to pay, but you know, they had a recent posting that paid quite a bit more than my office for a job that in my office would be pretty low-end job. Compared to what my paralegals do, my victim witness support staff do, and basically everybody does in my office. But so we don't seem to. So the number of applicants are generally there for support staff, but as for qualifications, we don't really see anybody that has a degree in criminal justice or paralegal or really legal field related. It's usually somebody that has little to no experience in the criminal justice system or some experience, you know, whether it's at a police department or something else. So staffing is still an issue.
So along those lines, has the body camera influx of that must have hit your department some, right?
It did, and if you recall, last year I did come begging for an additional position to handle discovery. So when those were being implemented by our local law enforcement agencies, we did add an FTE to basically her job is to exclusively deal with the body cameras that are coming in, putting them in the system, disclosing them to defense. And so
Because that turned out to be adequate?
I think that attitude, or not attitude, I think the position or the answer to that question changes on a weekly basis. At some point, I'm like, okay, it sounds like things are smooth and it's good. And then some weeks it's like, we need another person to help with this stuff. So I'm going to say currently adequate, depending on the week.
What,
So do you cross-train so others can fill in the gap when it gets overloaded?
Yeah, we have one specific person that's dedicated to that who had been in the office in multiple other positions, but that's one thing that we are doing a lot more of now. What I anticipate down the road in the next 1 to 5 years is I have a lot of newer, well, not only staff, but also attorneys. But on the staff side, my 2 paralegals who do the work of 20, who've been in the office 20 and 25 years, I anticipate they will be no longer working in the next 1.5 to 5 years. So cross-training is an issue that we are starting to work on. Obviously, not only between felony, paralegal, and other positions, but amongst all positions. On the attorney side, I don't have the exact math, but about 2 years ago, so we have DPAs and senior DPAs, right? Which are 2 different pay scales, which are generally based upon years of experience and or experience in what they handle. Out of my criminal attorneys of, let's just say 10, 2 years ago, 6 of them were senior DPAs that probably had anywhere between 10 and 15 years experience. I have 1 senior DPA now. So I have 9 or 10 that are DPA, much less experience. So those 6, you know, you have 1 that moved over to civil, about 4 that have taken other jobs, and then Eric, who's become chief. obviously at the turn of the year. So I do have probably be coming to you soon to make a recommendation on maybe one or two other, but, so we've had a shift in experience, which to be honest, in how that's translated over to trials, we've been very successful so far this year. I think we've had 15 felony trials, 12 out of 15 have been guilty verdicts. Usually the not guilty has something to do with DV type situation, where perhaps a victim is recanting or changing story.
So going back to the question, you said it's adequate at the moment. Could you define what you mean by adequate? What I'm looking for there is if we have a weakness or a problem in that, how does it manifest itself? With very long delays or errors in the editing, if you will?
Well, I think most court-related delays are generally, our perspective is, well, our attorneys are going to be ready to go to trial on a case on any given week. But there's a lot of variables that come into play. You know, Friday afternoon at 2:00, our DPA's chief, myself, we all meet. We go over every single case that's set for the following readiness hearing, which is on a Tuesday for the next week's trials. That a lot of times there's, let's say 40 to 60 cases that have a trial date set for that next week. So us as an office, we go through every single case on the list and prioritize. Okay, this is a go. It's going to trial on our end. This is a plea. This is a set over for some reason. Maybe there's a material witness that's unavailable. Maybe somebody's on pre-scheduled vacation, or whatever it may be, or a defense motion to continue. So we go through all the cases, the Friday before the readiness calendar, and we generally prioritize. Okay, out of the 40, we can go on these 8, but these 2 are our priority. But there's a lot of other factors that come into play. The court only has so much availability. Generally at most you're going to get 2 courtrooms, 8 days of trials in a week, right? 2 courtrooms, Tuesday through Friday. If there's judicial unavailability, perhaps like last week, judicial conferences, all the judges were gone. Judge Warning was here. One judge was here plus Judge Warning. Judge Warning did do a trial. I guess that was the week before. So judicial or courtroom availability. And then you also have the defense side of it. So obviously every defendant has an attorney. They may want a continuance for some reason. They haven't done interviews, or they want to file a motion, or they're not ready because they won't say this, but their client hasn't talked to them.
Yeah, but I was asking you specifically for the body camera stuff. You've got staff assigned to it, and I'm wondering how, and you said you've got adequate staff assigned to it. So then I wanted a definition of adequate, meaning to say, if it's not adequate, how will that manifest itself? You'll be too late to provide the data, or your editing, or I forget what it's called anyhow, is faulty, and so you let information out that you shouldn't have, that kind of thing.
Well, the body cam, we're required to turn over to defense what we receive. Now,
Everything.
the editing and
Raw.
whatnot, that would apply to public records requests. So if somebody made a public records request for an investigative file that had X amount of hours of body cam. And so we do have software that we're able to do. So luckily, most of the requests for files go to the records department, not our office. But so yeah, the editing is not so much an issue as it pertains to what our obligation to do in a criminal case is, which is to turn it over to the defense.
If I'm the DPA, I'm going to want to take a look at the body cam information, right? And that could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of body cam view. Is that something the DPA does, or do you have staff that would look at that? Because almost all of that space is just useless.
Well, the DPA, yes, is looking at the body cam footage. Generally speaking, obviously, it's a much more in-depth look if you have a case that's most likely to go to trial. because obviously body cam footage in and of itself can be, well, it can go one of two ways, but generally it's very helpful as it pertains to trial because the jury gets to see and hear the interaction that occurred. I guess there's one case, this is last year, we had a trial where it was an assault 3 of a medical healthcare professional. The defendant had been taken to the hospital to be checked out before transported to the jail. This case went to trial, and he was making claims that the law enforcement officer had pushed him on the ground. So he's in the hospital room. He starts
saw
yelling.
that.
He says, "Hey, you pushed me to the ground." Well,
Saw that video.
the officer was in the doorway with his camera looking at the guy, and the guy throws himself on the, he's like 15 feet away from him, throws himself on the floor and starts making accusations. So the jury got to see that. So I guess just with like, on the attorney side, we've implemented a lot more, we've kind of spread caseloads. Generally speaking, we've always had one person, one and a half people handle sex offense related cases. We spread those around. Obviously, a part of our job is to go to CJAC interviews, which are forensic interviews of children who may be suspected of sexual or physical abuse. So we spread those around. We spread our cases because if you lose somebody who has an expertise and or a primary caseload of something like that or others, you know, it can be difficult to reassign. So we spread out different types of cases. We do trainings every Friday after our 2 o'clock meeting. So usually there's a portion of training, like for example, this past Friday, Eric did some training on 3.5, which has to do with defendant statements made to law enforcement while in custody, whether they're admissible in court. He's done trainings on appellate stuff. And so we do a lot more trainings. So we're trying to work around the lack of experience, but I think from a end product, I think we're in a really good place right now on kind of what we're doing as to when cases get to trial and or resolutions and or, you know, victim interaction. I mean, realistically speaking, from 2020 to 2022, COVID really threw a monkey wrench into probably everybody's lives, but also the criminal justice system, because we were faced with a situation where, you know, the courts were closed, for lack of a better term, and it delayed a lot of cases. So a lot of cases that have been around for a while are getting closed out, and so we don't have cases that are near as old as what we did, you know, a year ago.
Do we have any residuals left?
I'm sure we do. I don't have my trial sheet, but I would say it's fairly, you're always going to have some old cases that for one reason or another are years old, but nothing like what there was a year ago. I mean, I can think of one 2019 case that's still around that may be going to trial soon, but that was a case that it's probably gone through multiple, well, it has gone through multiple prosecutors in my office, but also multiple defense attorneys. And, but I'd say there's very few cases that go back to even 2020 now.
The reason that's an interesting answer is last I heard, and there may be a time lag in there, the courts were telling us they're still struggling to catch up with the backlog. And of course, COVID has been blamed for that. But you can't have a backlog if it doesn't involve the PA's office.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say there's still a backlog. I can't give you numbers right now, but
Don't backpedal on me.
I can't give you numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but at least from my office perspective, there has been, well, the Blake decision reduced quite a few number of felony cases that came to the office in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think that kind of has allowed our office to catch up a little bit. But yeah, last year felony numbers were down, and I think that allowed an opportunity to catch up.
But I think the judges were referring to the civil cases, which you alluded to, that there is a backup there, and not with prosecutions, because you know, criminal trials take a precedence. So the backlog that you encounter would be those that the defense attorneys agreed to go beyond the what's the phrase? The speedy public
Speedy
trial.
trial. And they, absent a client who's in custody, who's really trying to push it, most cases do not result, don't go to trial within the 60 days in custody, 90 days out. Obviously, a major case is going to take much more time for the defense attorney to evaluate, for us to receive evidence, but I mean, generally speaking, as far as I see it, the only way to get cases resolved is to take cases to trial. Because to be honest, Dave, we're dealt on a weekly basis. We have defense attorneys and or defendants wanting to continue cases out forever. So if we're taking cases to trial, that's gonna cause the process that got us to there in other cases to happen quicker. Like, okay, there's an offer to plead guilty that expires at pretrial or whenever it may be. If you don't take it by pretrial, we're going to trial. Well, you go to trial, you win, then all of a sudden, okay, maybe I should, defense attorney, maybe I should resolve cases. So, I mean, trials, as far as I'm concerned, trials, successful trials, at least on our end, make other things happen in the criminal justice system, whether it's guilty pleas or if somebody's entitled or not entitled, but eligible for therapeutics, stuff like that. Endless continuances are no good, obviously.
Okay. In a nutshell, at least what I'm hearing is yeah, we have some challenges, but we've worked through some things, and actually things are moving at a better pace than they were even a year ago. Is
I
that
think so.
fair?
And we're in the midst of some shifting of how cases are handled in Superior Court. I think this week there's some changing on case management, case processing that's happening right now. Judge Scudder's been pushing.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel it's slight, I would love to be fully staffed basically, but it's been quite some time. I do have some attorneys that are running ragged on, we've had a lot of case shifts,
Yeah.
whether it's people leaving or whatever it may be, where all of a sudden they have these 80 cases that now need to be dispersed, but you're a few positions short. So, but I feel slightly okay right now,
Okay.
slightly.
Always lots of questions. There was a time, maybe a year or two ago, where your office was looking for a case management software, I think is the right term, or OPD wanted, there was an interaction where you had software not compatible or useful to OPD and trying to transfer information back and forth. Did that all get straightened out?
I have no clue what they're doing. As far as I know, they don't really have a case management system. But our office in 2014, right before I took office, took on ImageSoft. There was another word for it as well. District Court also, they still use that program. But it was for lack of a better term, a train wreck for us because the schematic of what the program was supposed to be, the previous office manager, there were so many workarounds. It was just a train wreck. So we moved to PBK, Prosecutor by Carpel, which is a out of the box program, but that was in 2016 or 17. So we've had PBK since then. A couple of years ago, I think it was back in Miss Reardon was looking for funding to do case management system for OPD. I think we provided our input, showed them what PBK by defense. I don't know what they have. So.
And they decided against that, which frustrated me because we get too many individual packages that we have to support. And then there's always, well, they don't quite talk to each other. And
Yeah, everything we basically send over to them is a link.
so there
Well,
are no issues to the best of your knowledge. At this
On our
point.
end, but just recently we had a trial where a defense attorney was trying to say, oh, I never received, this was an out of town defense attorney, was trying to claim that she had never received this certain, police report or whatever it may be. And my prosecutor in court was able to click on the file, click on the link, say, actually, your office received this on such and such date, and you opened it on such and such date and time.
Oh, ouch.
So on our end, we're able to see, what was sent over, what's actually been, when the link was opened, but how OPD is managing those links, that's probably a better I'm unaware of
Okay,
issues,
I'm
but
good.
I'm sure Julie, who's on vacation this week, is in contact with Tina on any issues, but
Yeah, okay, thank you.
yeah, I'm unaware as to what program they're actually using or if it's useful or helpful.
Okay. Ryan, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated.
And I'll come back and talk about, I was trying to figure out topics and really got to none of them, but our felony diversion program, because I was kind of looking at numbers, and we can do that at a later date though.
Risk management is what I see next.
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. Shelley is our risk manager, is out on personal leave today. And so we're here filling in. She'll be here next month. We're not doing the financials because we're only going to do those quarterly. We did those last month for you. And so we'll do those in June. And so we're going to just jump right into the slides that Scott's prepared. And we're trying to show you the same slides every month with updated numbers. There hasn't been a tremendous change on this one, for example, and I'll turn it over to Scott to explain.
Yeah, no real major changes since we last reported. So. Next slide. Same thing on this slide too, not too much change. We had one closeout in January, one workers' comp claim workout closeout in January, and then we have a couple in pending for this last quarter. Next slide, please. Again, since last reported, no real big changes. Slips and falls is our most common injury. Yeah, that's it for this one too.
On these slides, is there any way of indicating the deltas from the last time you?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is there any way to indicate the delta of the change from last time, since we're
We
coming
definitely can do
every
that.
month?
We can definitely do that, yeah. Just the one that fell off this last January, there's not really been any much changes. Departments that have the most workers claim percentage wise has not really changed. Next slide.
And that's percentage by count of, if there
Mhm.
were 100, the sheriff's department had 17.
Not by
of-
dollar amount, but by count.
Thank you.
This is just a summary of our claims. We have 12 open currently, 5 that are in submission or pending. And then we had closed 112 from 2018 to 2024.
I'll take this one. So in the liability claims, we want to thank all the departments. We had a major survey from our risk pool. And so all of those were turned in on time. And so we're very thankful to the departments for supplying that information. We also, on our landfill fire, we received our reimbursement back from the risk pool on that one. It's approximately $155,000. And we're still working on the motor pool fire claim, and hopefully we'll be able to submit that and get it in final state so that we can get that reimbursement. And it looks like that cost is a little over $81,000 for the county for the motor pool fire.
So you received the reimbursements. Where, does it go back to the department that
Yes, that,
damage occurred in?
right. That particular reimbursement will go back to the landfill, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. because they had expenses in the first quarter of purchasing the new tarps and ropes and things like that to make those repairs. And then this, continuing the liability claims, this is a snapshot as of the end of April. We started the month off with 11 claims. We brought in 3 new ones and we closed 3 claims and we ended up with the same number, 11.
Just an update on our injury incident reporting policies that we had changed the forms so that they're fillable PDF forms rather than Word documents for security reasons. Also, just make it a little easier for readability and submissions to us. And then our next step on this process is to update the intranet site to have those forms as links rather than having someone send an attachment. Because there's a lot of versions out there currently that we're trying to eliminate so that we're not using different forms. So that's what we're currently working on right now. And then the next step after that is after that's up, the intranet site is updated for the risk management site, to send out a reminder or I guess a reminder email on the policy for reporting on injuries or incident reports so that everyone has just a clear understanding of what's expected from the departments. An update on the AED rollouts. We are still looking at costs and evaluating. We are planning on rolling out surveys this week to all the departments to get that data collected, to see how many we need, to see what versions of AEDs we have, because there is a lot of options out there, so.
We found out ours talks to you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ours,
down here
ours
will-
walks you
will tell
right,
you
Oh,
walks-
what to do.
walks you right through it.
Yeah.
And then the evacuation maps, we're still working on that. We haven't moved too much on it just because of other issues that had come up recently, but this is still an ongoing project.
You probably need to add our building to those evacuation maps. Our map still
Yes.
shows some place called the vault.
Yeah.
I have not seen the vault since I've been here for 11 years.
Yeah, there is things that we can do internally to that are cost effective that we can do.
Our maps also still list Public Works as being based in this building.
Mhm.
They haven't been here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you go back? We're starting with the HOJ and our intention is to have all the buildings updated with evacuation maps, but because that building has so much attention to it right now, and it's the largest, it's probably going to take the most time to update. That's the most critical area that we're looking at right now. So, but our plan is to update all the
All of
building
them.
maps. One thing that I am bringing up for NeoGov is a recommendation on having required training for administrators, managers, and supervisors to learn how to use NeoGov. In my last couple of months of employment, I have come to the realization that not a lot of individuals that work for the county don't really know what NeoGov does. I think for that system to work well, the people who manage the system in their own departments, I think need some required training, because if you don't require it, they're not going to take it, even though it's going to better assist them in their departments. I think that there's just a lot of reluctancy to learn a system. So my recommendation is to have training put out to specific roles. So in this case, you have the administrators, which has a separate role than managers and supervisors. The administrators has access to adding courses, enrolling individuals, scheduling. There's a lot more that they can put in to NeoGov than managers and supervisors. Supervisor or managers and supervisors in their current role in NeoGov can assign training, and that's it. So that's why I am recommending that those two specific roles have more extensive training. And when I mean extensive, it's not a grueling course. It's about a 5-minute video.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about is the Narcan rollout. We at the administration building had purchased a small batch of Narcan to implement and spread out to the various departments in the administration building. We are planning on doing a more extensive rollout with Narcan to make sure all departments in the county get or have access to Narcan. So this is kind of a phase 1 approach on this specifically. And then with that Narcan rollout, to provide Narcan training and fentanyl exposure training through NeoGov, which we have.
Did this kind of get driven a little bit by offices receiving mail that
Yeah.
had stuff? in it?
Offices
Yeah.
being targeted
Yeah,
with tainted mail. And so we want to be proactive and try to help and make sure that they have have some Narcan on hand, and as well the training to go with it.
One more thing that I actually want to mention on the training, something that we had not added to the slide was that last Thursday we had supervisor training. We had risk pool come out that was hosted by HR that they had set up a while back. They came out to the event center last Thursday and it was a really great turnout, really great feedback. Seemed like it was a really receptive and audience. And yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on that. It was an all-day training. It was 2 different courses, and we had filled both courses with supervisors. So
How many?
Uh,
We had over 30
yeah, I believe it was 34 was the count.
attend. Those,
good.
And that's it.
Questions?
Yep.
yes.
We've done workers' comp, liability. What about the torts?
Oh, in liability claims, that is both litigation and torts combined in
Oh,
those numbers,
okay.
both.
Is it worth making a distinction? I'm not sure.
I can split those out if you think it's useful.
So of those 11, how many are which kind, just off the top of your head?
They're probably half and half as of right now. They're probably about half for litigation and half for torts.
I think seeing the litigation is useful, but I don't know whether it's, yeah, anyhow.
If you'd like, I can do that.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Solid waste.
Oh, okay.
All right. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, again. we have solid waste, and we're gonna just basically do we're not gonna do any of the post-closure. Oops. Please. I'm gonna borrow yours. Sorry. So the first one we're gonna do is the fund 40801, which is the solid waste maintenance. This is the fund that has the majority of the activity and also the employees. And so on the revenue side, and this is through 4 months worth of data. And it's hot off the presses this morning. We have $5.2 million of revenue that's come in for the 4 months. And we have some miscellaneous revenue and proprietary funds. But the majority of their revenue is through the billings, right? So you can see that we're sitting at about 19% of the total revenue that's budgeted for the year. So we're a little bit behind on this.
So in looking at these, for the 2023 accrual that we send back to prior year was about $3.1 million. And then currently we have about 3.3 million in accounts receivable or outstanding billings currently as well.
Right. So we've, last year's actuals were for the year total 27 million. This year's budget is $27,339,000. And so we feel comfortable with that budget as of right now. So.
A good thing you mentioned accounts receivable. I was already about to say,
And that's adjusted at the end of the year. So there'll be a catch up. Excuse me.
Receivables in there, we're probably closer to the 25,
Yeah.
30%.
close to a
Range.
third, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Any questions on the revenue side?
Is that revenue cyclical or is it pretty steady month in and month out?
Yeah, it is cyclical in nature. During the summertime, we usually see a rise in waste coming through, both our own transfer station and our outside customers as well. We also entertain one-off jobs throughout the summer. For example, we just completed one on Industrial Way for a site cleanup where they're doing some sort of construction program there to build another facility. Or last year, and during January and February, we had the box plant construction going on, and we took quite a bit of waste coming in to go with that project as well.
that's the C&D type waste, so we're not too keen on it.
Sometimes it is C&D, sometimes it's a contaminated soils of nature. It depends. Usually it's not an MSW product.
And you show a very slight increase this year over last year for the budget. I assume the reason for that slight increase,
So our
opposed to being a large increase.
yeah, so last year, in preparation for some of the new contracts we were signing this year, we did excuse a few customers. And we haven't done any rate increases for our transfer station. We do have an annual increase for our outside waste coming in of about CPI, I think that's 3.5% this year.
This is probably not a bad time. The transfer station cost us,
We lose about $1.4 million a year at the transfer station.
so if we dabbled a little with that, we could actually make up a difference that would be noticeable.
Mhm.
The cities would not be happy.
That's true. It's always a balance.
Yeah.
When we subsidize something, typically bad things happen, and we're subsidizing it, and I'm not suggesting that we would drop it overnight, but I would have a program that says by this date in the future, we should be self-sustaining or break even, I guess is the right word.
Since we are talking about receivables a little bit, just clarify for me, do we, when those come in, are they credited to at the time of inception or the time of when you receive them?
It's when we receive them. At the end of,
So any receivables at the end of the year, if we collect them in January, it gets credited to 2025?
so we will do a large accrual at the
Adjust.
end of the year, yeah.
At end of year, you adjust it.
Mhm.
Okay. I got it.
They'll look at cash coming in both January and February
Mhm.
to determine how much of that was actually for a receivable of a prior year.
So for 24, we took about 3.1 and put that back in 23.
Okay.
Okay, on the expenditure side, so one of the personnel expenditures are at 25% of budget for the current year. So that's what I would have expected. So, and we're showing 18 headcount for FTEs in the solid waste, the landfill. Of course, our personal expenses are a little bit unfavorable compared to last year because of COLAs and position changes. But that's not significant. And we did budget for that. And then in our supplies area, there's an unfavorable variance, but that's because we bought supplies to do that fire damage repair. And so we did, and I think the revenue's already showing up. I mean, like I said, it's hot off the presses. The revenue's already in there for that reimbursement. And then on the services side, we had rent payments in 2023. For some reason, both quarters rent went into the first quarter. And then this year in 24, we only have one rent payment. So that's what's actually showing as a favorable variance. And that's about it. And the transfers represent funds that are going to post-closure
Post-closure and ELF.
and ELF. What is it?
ELF.
ELF.
Question on the previous, on the PA's office stuff, the capacity remaining is noted as a negative number, and the capacity remaining here is noted as a positive number.
They probably all should have been positives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah, I
you.
think it was probably a sign error, changing the sign
Yeah,
formula.
yeah, and that's kind of why I asked if we could have them
Yeah.
beforehand, because I was getting confused
Okay.
on that. Okay.
Yeah, it should be positive because you want to know what do you have remaining left.
Right.
So. And I don't see anything in this solid waste that would probably mandate a budget amendment yet.
We will be seeing
Oh, yes.
a budget
Yes,
amendment
there is one. I'm sorry.
for both the insurance recoveries and for the PUD 6 million.
Yeah, for the 6
Oh,
million. That hasn't been expended yet, and the budget hasn't been amended for that yet, for that approval.
It will be on the next one.
So, quick update on the PUD stuff. Is there one?
No additional updates since our last signing. They're still going through their design process and working on a final agreement for the big agreement.
So it's, we're actively working on the final agreement?
They're still working on some final designs and some ecology
agreement.
and clean air stuff.
Yeah.
But once that's done, then we'll be on to the agreement.
I'm just smiling because that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one that we're going to go over is the one that's budgeted for the equipment and land in the facility. Solid waste, it's Fund 40802. And on the revenue side, other financing is revenue coming in, which is a transfer in to this fund. And that was 5 million that's been recorded for the first quarter. It's basically the whole budget year is already booked.
What are we planning to use the reserves for?
Sure. So this year, we just took delivery of our D8. We'll be paying that out of the L fund. And then we are planning for construction of cell 10 in 2026. That's at 30% design currently. And we estimate that to be between 12 and 14 million. So that's what we're reserving for, is our equipment and our cell expansions.
And the other financing sources, that just comes from the landfill. Revenues from the landfill, right?
Yeah, that's our transfers out from our operating fund.
Right. And the expenditures that they're planning, they've set aside 2 million, 2.1 million so far for budget, but they haven't incurred any expenditures yet for this year.
We'll be seeing one of those payments come very shortly. We just took delivery of that, and staff is enjoying that equipment currently.
And the expenditures that we're budgeting for 2024 are in line with what they had in 2023 actuals. They had 2.4 million last year.
How much does the D8 cost?
The D8 was about 1.3 million. And then we have a few undercarriage rebuilds in there as well.
Does that include the protection plan in case the chairman wants to drive it?
I think so. He was out of town that day.
Is that the one without the sticker yet that we were gonna carve out a channel with?
Ooh.
So the Ls are always provide a certain amount of interest, right?
And really that's it for the financial section. And then I think Sean has a program.
Quick question on the financial still. So you've got a fair amount that that Deborah Gardner has in an account for you collecting interest?
So all of our post-closure funds, I have that here. I was going to talk about that. It's a great time.
Okay.
So Tenant Way, we have two post-closure accounts. We have the lined and the unlined sections of Tenant Way. Those being 930,000 for the unlined and 5.8 million in the lined. Those are accruing interest, and we do our annual programs out of those funds. We have one fund that's just for customer deposits, and that's about $40,000. And then we have our post-closure and closure fund at the landfill, and those are about $29 million as well.
And they're also,
Those are fully invested funds, and so whatever the return rate, I think she's getting from the LGIP right now, it's being applied, or her program, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They're 5.1%, sounds good.
is 5.1% as we speak?
Yep.
And that was that same number 3 months ago? It was lower, right? Oh, but it does fluctuate.
Much better than a few years ago, I can tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a little lower. I don't remember the numbers either, but I know it's grown this past quarter. It was up a little bit, so. Yeah. Oh, we got almost, you're right around 35 million. It just sits for closure of these two places, yeah.
Yes, sir. So we are actively spending the Tenant Way one. We're 10 years into it. We got another 20 years left on that. So we're almost there.
Only 20 years.
We don't want to be almost there, do we? But then what do we worry about? Right? We don't
Well,
worry
I was wondering, I'm not sure I can show up for the inauguration of the carrying up of the certificate.
Yeah.
But the solid waste fund actually has $12 million sitting in reserve, so
Pardon me?
you have solid waste maintenance. 801, that has an additional $12 million sitting.
Yeah, so currently we're at 10.9 on that, and that's where we'd be paying that $6 million out of for PUD as well.
Okay.
Just if the board has any questions for us.
Just out of curiosity, by the time the landfill closes, what do you think, what's the goal to have in there? What do you expect to have in? That's just a curiosity question.
I want to estimate it's about 130 in net present value, but come that time period, I'm sure it'll be much higher than that.
Probably close to 200 million or so by
Yeah.
that time. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't know whether that's $24 or,
Right. Right. I know it's a,
And we do calculate that on an annual basis, and that's what drives our transfers
It's-
into the
it's a wag.
post-closure. Yeah.
oh,
Well, 130 million, that'll build half a Hall of Justice.
well, in 20 years, it'll cost us more than that for all justice. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Oh, Sean, excuse me. So next year you're anticipating the rent's going up to about 8 million to the general fund?
We're at the pleasure of the board there.
Well, you're.
always a good answer.
You have expected.
He says that because he knows he's not gonna be here. And he knows who's gonna get the phone calls.
There won't be phone calls.
Well, the thing always to remember is that it's a business and business needs fund to continue the business. Those people that don't do that end up going out of business, and we don't want to do that.
Right. You know, we're running. You want to head right into agenda item review?
Yep.
And public, looks like a pretty slim agenda, but I see Public Works on the agenda or Deborah, you had something? Yeah, sorry.
Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer. On the agenda tomorrow is a contract for our courier, Phoenix Protective Services. They pick up our deposits from all the different locations and deliver it to the bank. So that is a 3-year contract, and it gives us the option to extend it for up to 3 years at 1-year term. So this will be a 1-year extension to that contract. So that will be on the consent agenda for
Consent agenda
tomorrow,
tomorrow.
if you have any questions on that. The second item I have, it's not on the agenda tomorrow, but it is, it's a document related to that Three Rivers wastewater document that we signed on April 24th. And it's basically a closing certificate, and it refers back to the document that was signed on April 24th, basically saying that none of those things have changed in our statements that were made in that document. The bond attorney needs this back today, so I was hoping to get Commissioner Mortensen's signature today, and then I can put it on the consent agenda for next week.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay. And since I was coming up here, I just ran some numbers. Our taxes that we collected for the first half, we collected 93.81%. So far, we still have some mail to process. And I did look at 16.84% was collected on the second half. Arn asked me that question. This report doesn't allow me to go back to prior years because I was going to
Mhm.
compare it. I did ask the vendor to run me some reports from their side to just to give me that information so I could tell you, but 16%, 16.8% paid their second half as well.
That's significant, actually.
Yeah, that's actually higher than I would have guessed.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right.
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I read it or do I take it? I'll just sign.
And this is the one I sent you.
Yeah. I can never sign my name. Is that good enough?
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners again. Long time no see. So for the board agenda tomorrow, we have 3 items. The first one is coming from Susan. Unfortunately, she was not able to be here today. And that is a correction from an October 3rd item where the miles on the Clem River Road culvert were incorrect. They were originally listed at 2.6. And from mile markers 2.02 to 2.06, and those have been corrected to 2.35 to 2.39. And then we also have 2 bid awards. The first one is to LROC for $319,132.39, and that's for our chip seal rock for the year. We did have 3 bidders on that one, and that ranged from the 319 all the way up to $422,000. LROC was the lowest bidder. And comparing it to prior years, this is actually a lower value per ton than we saw in 2022.
I don't recognize the name. Is that a local firm, a new firm, or
They're out
merged?
of Toledo.
They're in Toledo. Okay.
Yeah, we have used them before. And then our other bidders are also ones we've used in the past. Goods Crushing out of Winlock and JL Storedall, that's local here. And then our third item is another bid award to all bidders. This is our annual rock program for, as we're working and need a load of rock for some item, we go to the closest quarry at that time and pick up rock for the project that we're working on. And any questions on those?
So if you're working up in Castle Rock, you're probably going to use L Rock. If you're down in Woodland, you're going to use somebody else. Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And a couple pretty simple agenda tomorrow. Of course, we have Board of Health at 10. I had a couple miscellaneous things I thought I'd just run by both of you. I briefly talked to Dennis on Thursday. And I know I get it. I need to get a life, but I will sometimes watch other counties' meetings just to see what they do and how they do things. And I was tuned into Lewis County and I was watching it and they're running down their agenda and they had an agenda item on there for press. The press had an agenda line if they wanted to, and they just treated it like the Daily Chronicle was there and was able to talk to the commissioners and ask a couple questions. And I said to Dennis on Thursday, I said, what do you think of that? And I just throw that out to you. I don't know if it's a standard thing or when if the Chronicle says we'd like to come over, they give them some time. I personally don't have any issue with that if the Daily News wanted to do that, but I thought I'd throw it out for other thoughts too.
Yeah, I don't look at us being preferential toward them as a good thing. I'm saying they're just like any other citizen that comes up and wants to ask questions. And they're free to do that.
Yeah. Other couple items, and they both relate to LT1. What was it? Whatever day it was it Thursday? Might have been Thursday.
Like
That the first?
Thursday.
Yeah. I went out, Jim had department about, I don't know, 7 people from Department of Ecology out there and listened through that. I met the new guy, he's out of Vancouver and chatted with him a little bit. Basically what they went over is, I mean, you've heard Jim explain that for quite a few years and look at that and I'm not sure what role the Department of Ecology can play in that after listening to it, but it seemed to go fine. The bigger thing that I was interested in is David, the streets, that runs the public works and streets for Castle Rock. Took Savannah and I out to the area where they currently dump they spread their biosolids. They spread it and then they put grass seed on it, and I was interested in seeing the area and see what kind of cover it had. And so we went out and took a look at that, and if you know Castle Rock at all, they kind of have that little they have, well, you can do skating, they have some basketball hoops, they have little, mountain bike course thing in the back. And behind that is where they do this, and they have a berm that protects it from the river. But it's really, the ground cover there is, you wouldn't even know it. It's like a field. They choose to plant grass. You could probably plant anything. That was more interesting to me than the other, because you could actually see they had some stuff going there.
Is it maintained? Do they mow it?
No, it just, it's a grass cover.
And do they use the Class A or Class B biosolids? Is it what Jim's proposing to use, or is it the one that Three Rivers is gonna be building?
Well, it's not the most refined. It's out of their plant, and then they have to store it over by the plant because it has to be undercover or something. And I think in October, he said there's a window when nobody can go out in there, and they spread it and then they put grass seed on it. But I've lived in Castle Rock a long time, and I've never seen an issue. They've been doing it since 1990. I thought that was interesting.
It kind of makes you ask some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, and it's related to LT1, is, when you sit and listen to that, and you listen to the Army Corps, it becomes very, very clear that what they're looking at is different than what we're asking for. And to get them to look at something closer to what we're asking for, it would take, it's not just I suppose if the Army Corps really wanted to be gracious, they could do that, but really what they do is what Congress initially told them to do back in the time. So I actually put a call into David Hodges, and I'm going to have lunch with him next Tuesday. Actually, I think Savannah's going to go along with that, and maybe another person. And I just want to explore the process. If we want to ask the Corps, how do we work that through Congress? What's the process on that? If we want to start making that request, and then I'll bring back whatever information he has and share that.
Along those lines, are we precluded from doing the dredging ourselves if we wished?
Uh,
You know,
I
does the
believe
law
so.
prevent us from doing?
Yeah, I believe so. I said, because one of the things I talked about, if the county found the money tree and we could buy our own dredge, could we go out and dredge it? No.
That's, yeah.
Although we did have a good dozer idea, and we had a great dynamite idea, but one of you has to be willing to push the button.
I just saw a volunteer.
Yeah.
I saw the double hand volunteer.
Well, you know, when you stand up there and you look, you realize across from LT1, that's county owned property too.
Yeah.
You can see where the old, well, and I could see it from, aerial photo Mike gave me when I went back to Washington DC, where it ran on the other side, and you can see the channel. And it just takes one kaboom and here goes the water. Yeah. And then I'd be wearing orange. You know what? And I'll tell this story because it cracked me up. Is it Darren from Conservation District?
Yeah,
I like him and he's a smart man and he was talking about, I forget the project he was talking about, but they're talking about a project and he put in the project dynamite to do this out. And he said the permit actually come through. And I wouldn't have done this, but he did this. He went back to him and he showed him the permit and they said, you actually let this go through. I'd have just blown it up because it was in the permit. But he said, oh, that must have been a mistake.
he probably should not have called it to their attention. Just use that for
Exactly.
his own information in the
Exactly.
future. If you want to slip it in, this is how to do it.
Anyway, any other? That's what I had. Oh, one other thing for miscellaneous, and I don't know when, do you remember when when the Children's Discovery Center was in?
Yeah.
And they wanted us to come over and visit and I was tied up in 911 meeting that day and others ran into. So I went over and visited them with them on a Friday and just looked at the operation. And actually the Children's Discovery Museum, it was pretty active the day I was there. They have the one gentleman is the one-page staff and working on it. And their ask to us is they're going to be moving from the building on Commerce. Catlin is giving them some space at them. They pay, I want to say close to 7,000 a month for rent or something on the current building.
7,000.
I could be wrong. It's pretty high when you look at it. And Catlin is giving them some space where they'll have individual rooms like for, they have different sections that are just kind of spread around in this deal. They'll have individual rooms. They'll be able to target specific things better. They host a lot of birthday parties and he laid out a plan. There's so much funded on public donation now that he's got a plan laid out to work into like annual passes and different things. He's been in the business quite a while. He kind of developed the Rose Center and he did some other things. He looks pretty young, but he's been in that quite a while. And their rent's going to be a lot less. They think it'll be a lot more affordable. What the ask from us is to help them get over there and set up. They're talking one-time costs, not annual contributions. And the one-time cost I see in the book he gave me was about 50 grand. So I told him, well, I'd bring it up if we have an interest in entertaining that. I can set a workshop for it and we can look at it in more detail. I think it has some value. They don't charge people to come in. I mean, if you go to Homsey, it's $17 a person. If you go up to the Olympia one, it's I think $13 is what they said. So it does benefit families around here of lesser means. It probably has some benefits. He does have a plan to try and get it self-supporting.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm tainted here, but I'm pretty positive on that. It's, it's really, yeah. The reason I might be tainted is that I've, I think he's one of the more dedicated and hardworking people I've met
Yeah.
with any of that stuff. So I can go a long way with someone who is like that,
Yeah.
constructive.
The one thing I asked him, and I said I would expect the others may want to know because you're going into the school. Are you going to be subject to mandates that schools get? And he said, no, they're not subject to that. And I said, if, and I said, I'll just be straight with you. What I can see here, you do educational type things. It's pretty obvious. You're counting, you're figuring out prices and you're making and doing all this other different things in science. If it stays educational, if it starts to go to social engineering, then that's going to be an issue.
Mhm.
He said we don't have to follow any of those mandates, and our thing is always education. And I think he's straight up with that.
So you mentioned Catlin, that's Catlin School
Mhm.
as they
The
finish.
schools use them now. They have Rainier schools come over and take some field trips and the other schools. So that'll still happen. Catlin will, they'll just be over at Catlin with some space.
So I think, Dennis, this is the time where you ask, where will the money come from?
Yeah,
Oh, as long as we have an elf fund, we've got plenty of money. The elves can take care of that,
I,
at least for 3 years. Isn't that the
Yeah.
rule?
and I'll look deeper in that. I just wanted to I didn't want to pursue something if you didn't have an interest in looking at that. But if you do, then I can
So
make a call.
Were you given the impression that they wanted county staff to do the moving? Or
No,
us to
no, they're
pay?
doing the moving. We're just helping them get set up in the new place, and they're estimating that around 50.
Actually, that's a request that goes to Kathy and she can figure out where the 5,000.
Yeah, and I let Kathy know, there was
Kathy
a
knows.
time maybe 3 years ago when we were looking actually for the conservation district. We were gonna bump them up to 50,000. And so, the landfill paid for that 50,000. We just increased their, was $7,050,000 it came. That's where that $50,000 was from. So I think you were spot on there.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally don't have any issues helping them on this move. I think that they do provide some benefit to the community. Unless I just caught it on a strange day, it was being used and it was active. And so,
Well, I know it's the right thing because I can see Mike Moss there hunching over as if he's not here.
well, I'll chat with Kathy, and if we see we have something together, then I'll bring it back to you guys again. Okay. Any other miscellaneous? Any public comments? Anybody? Have we heard from Jessica? Do we know if we have 11? Okay. We can break till 11. I don't even know if, I haven't heard from Jessica if we have anything from HR, but
Oh, we do.
we do.
The county administrator said that we have business. to
Okay.
do.
Take a few minute break and then 11 o'clock, we can do that. All right. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Just a correction. The Children's Discovery Museum has 7,700 a month in expenses. So that includes salary for one person plus the rent and utilities and stuff on the building. So that's where that's at. Okay. So we'll move into human resources. Jessica.
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I don't have any requests at this time, but I would like to request an executive session for performance of a public employee.
Performance of a public employee and estimated time,
Let's start with 15.
15 minutes.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll do that.
board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:22. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:29.
Okay, we're back from executive session. No action was taken. Turn over to Jessica.
Okay, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. Again, I have a couple requests from Public Works. The first request is to reclassify the county engineer 5%, which would place them at step 9 of salary grade 625.
I move that we approve that suggestion.
Any questions on the motion? Call for a vote in favor.
Aye.
Also vote aye.
Thank you. And the next item is a temporary reclassification of their finance manager, 5%, based on taking additional duties up at the landfill.
So moved.
Got a motion? See no questions, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye.
And then I have a request to fill their correct constructions manager is retiring at the end of the year, but will be out intermittently until then. So they'd like some overlap with that position. So they'd like to request to fill a construction manager position with overlap through the end of the year once they are able to hire.
I move to approve that request.
Okay. We have a motion. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And that's all I have today.
That's what you have. Good. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, see none, we will adjourn.